Right, so a nice, simple one today. With all the spoilers out, we've already talked about them, so I just want to solely focus on what Heavy Hitters means for Melody and, of course, Shiyana. The two decks that I am personally most interested in, because these are the two heroes that I really play, because they're fun, interesting mechanics that don't have a lot of support, so you really have to put your thinking cap on to try and make them work, and I always like the underdog story. Now, it has, playing Melody and even seeing all the Heavy Hitter stuff, it has put into perspective why they really didn't give her a bunch of stuff in her toolkit. If, she had anything else to do other than Final Act, she would be a fairly decent blitz hero. The fact that you can pressure, you can do everything a normal hero is doing, and then go into Final Act as your big finisher, would make her really strong, right? Like that's my honest belief, because it's such a big payoff and such a big thing to pressure and for the opponent to always worry about, that if you had proper things to do that also advance your goals and lead to Final Act along the way, it is going to be decent. And as for Shiyana, the current problem is, while you do have access to specializations, all the stuff you kind of want to lean towards and do is too heavily costed. But you know what? Heavy Hitters fixes both of those issues. So Shiyana is nice and simple because, well, all the specializations are at the top, but we have a big attack for 3, right? Decent effect, auto include. Then we have a bunch of Guardian attacks for 4. Big attacks, 4. 4 for 8 with strong effects, 4, 7, strong effects, right? So the fact that we can swap out Crippling Crush, we can swap out Starstruck, these cards that we need a decent more setup, because we don't have Seismic Surge, we don't have the luxury of X equipment pieces to allow us to facilitate their heavy cost. But now we have a 4, and a 4 is just so much better, right? We can still play a tool deck, we can still solely focus on trying to buff and play a big singular attack. But it being a 4 cost means we can block, we can play defensively, we can have a better time. So yeah, it's basically this deck minus like Crippling Crush, Starstruck, and putting in these other good attacks that also, for whatever reason, synergize with one another, right? It's almost like LSS are thinking about China, which is fantastic. Maybe they are, especially with all this specialization gear. But Betsy's Helm with Betsy's specialization, with Victor's specialization, and then up the ante. Cat's Eyes is more just fun, flavorful. In fact, you could probably just go with a nice big deck. Don't worry about the gold sync, and just do like up the ante, pay gold for Betsy's helmet, and then just use these really new strong attacks. And it's a decent amount, right? So between Big Bet, the Golden Sun, and Rhinas, that's 6 new cards that have a good cost to damage basis, not including the new generics that we've gotten as well. Couple that with, again, the equipment that is actually a lot more useful than what we can take, which is just very generic stuff. And yeah, I think Shiyana is eating well with this set. Oh, it's going to be fun. Just so much wagering. Obviously, we don't have the inbuilt hero mechanics, and I'm not going to say that the other cards really synergize just yet. The traps, the defensive options are good, right? So being able to take like Anthem of Spring with our buffs, and then the defensive options of Riptide is, yeah, all around decent. The payoff will be depending on the matchup and whose hero ability we can steal. That's when it will really shine. But just altogether, the simple fact that we can cut down the cost basis is going to be a huge, impactful change for Shiyana, and Heavy Hitters is to thank. So that is fantastic. I don't think we'd get that good of a advancement of Shiyana, right? So if the next set is, say, Wizard, Runeblade, of course there'll be some specializations. I don't think that's enough, because those cards are quite reliant on interactions with one another, whereas the main Guardian shtick, yes, they have their inbuilt mechanics to buff up and, again, to reduce cost, but the fact that we have these cheaper options and can still run some of the generic ways to buff up is fine. It will do the job, and we just have a bit more versatile toolkit. It's not necessarily better, but it does open up a bit of difference, and therefore, some mental game with our opponent. What exactly are we running? Are we going to pull out this X Heroes card that counters this? It's a big what if factor for Shiyana, along with now a good, strong core set of cards. So I'm excited. Now, of course, Melody. Yes, my favorite deck now with proper game pieces, so to speak. So basically, the biggest takeaway from Heavy Hitters is the simple fact that we now have stuff to do on the way to actually pulling off Final Act. And that is the big impactful difference of heavy hitters for Melody. So basically this is a combo deck, right? All we're trying to do is assemble the game pieces, not die, and try to pop off with our combo, right? It's like Kano, but I would say less consistent because we're reliant on drawing cards, less so on equipment. The fact that Storm Striders is on board and you're guaranteed to always have that combo piece is a lot more impactful than having to find catch out first and then go into our draw sequence. So the fact that we can now attack, we can play a more aggressive game that also furthers our progress into Final Act is fantastic. But then there's also what to do next. So for instance, the general shtick of this is to get silver, run predominantly blue so that we can crack the silver and then go into 2 Final Acts. Buffing up 1 Final Act to do enough damage is never going to work. So it has to be the full-on combo if we actually want to win the game. It also leaves us completely open and defenseless because, again, we're burning our equipment. We're just setting up to go into Final Act. And we're not doing anything to impact the game in any other way, right? Everything is basically non-reactive. We put our talisman, we cash it out, we draw, that's it. But, again, with heavy hitters, the fact that now we have payoffs after Final Act for starters is fantastic. So we have Tenacity and Down But Not Out. Just a awesome game plan if Final Act doesn't work, or even now we don't need as big of a Final Act. Just using Final Act as a powerful hit to then go into these other cards that are now a lot stronger, given our state of affairs. Again, no equipment, we've burnt through our tokens at this point, we're probably going to be low on health, so Down But Not Out is a fantastic option. But then even Tenacity. So the big thing with Tenacity is we stick a card in the arsenal, we play Final Act from hand. Our opponent should be thinking, at the very least, that's the first Final Act. Are they gonna follow it up with another Final Act? Do I block this one? Do I block that one? Right? If they block the first one, Tenacity is a great option to follow it up because it will be decently powerful. Obviously not as powerful as 2 Final Acts, but still decent. I mean, the other better option is Final Act, Tenacity, and that would be fantastic. That would be the clincher, right? In a proper just combo setup, I would definitely add that to it. But again, it's just the fact that we have more options, we have something to do along the way, is all just going to make Melody a lot stronger of a hero with, again, a really insane payoff that if it was fully supported, in all honesty, would probably be a bit too busted. So I can fully understand now why they printed her with such a limited variety of cards and the general inkling to just copper, not anything else. So again, Final Act into something like Tenacity or Down But Not Out. That's our follow-up plays, throw in last-ditch effort, and that's fantastic. But along the way, what can we do? We can wage gold, right? Performance bonus. We also have starting stake, so we're not set to taking crown, right? We can use starting stake to generate some gold. We can burn gold early just to thin out our deck and still use starting stake. We can clash to try and get some gold. So altogether, we probably want to run more attacks. And it's also a very decent defensive option that, again, still tries to further our goal of Final Act. Any card that allows us to pressure gold is that much more intense as Melody because it is, again, such a big payoff. While it does have payoffs in Betsy, it has payoffs in Victor, they're not as impactful as just a straight, if I get X amount of gold on the field, find Final Act, that's it. You need to shut me down from generating gold. So even the other card, performance bonus, right? We could probably even just pressure with a blue 1 attack. Put it in Arsenal, use it to start the chain, they have to block it. Probably take the 2, just so they might have to use something other than equipment, but it's weak, that generates gold, and that's the big impact in Melody. So we've got money where your mouth is. Now, there's not as many options as what I'd hoped, but there is still more than enough to play with, and it's going to be fun building these 2 decks. So altogether, it's not designed for Melody, it's not necessarily designed for Shiyana, but there is a lot coming with heavy hitters that feels like it was meant to be. Again, just the simple fact that there is something to do along the way, right? Every other class, every other hero, their cards synergize together, and while they might have these big payoff options, they're working towards that goal with every card they play, but they're also interacting with the opponent and pressuring them, forcing them to block, forcing them to spend their resources. This version of Melody, as fun as it is, doesn't do any of that, right? It's just us setting up our board state, trying to withstand everything they throw at us, and then popping off with a combo. But now we actually get to attack back, and that's going to be fantastic. And then again, as for Shiyana, the biggest impact is the change to the cost basis. By cutting out Crippling Crush, Starstruck, right? That's 2 7-cost cards gone. We then throw in the new 6 easier, cheaper strong effect attacks that we have access to. And it's all around going to form a much better, cleaner deck for Shiyana. So altogether, super excited for heavy hitters, not necessarily for the right reasons, mind you. Anyway, let me know, what do you think? Right? What are you excited for about heavy hitters? Have you found a weird alternative? I'm sure, right, for a lot of people, the expansion slot cards are probably their most exciting feature, right? Especially Judge, Jury, and Executioner is an awesome card. Solve and Luminaris for Illusioner. God, Illusioner is easily LSS's favorite child, right? But yeah, it's a good mix. It's going to be fun, even if you don't play it for the right reasons. I can see why they kept saying this is the new starting set. If you get into the game, this is the set for you. It's got simple mechanics with heroes, and then also still has fun, flavorful things for everyone else. I don't know how impactful Gold's going to be across the board, right? If a lot of different decks, other than even just Betsy, Victor, Olympia, and Kasai, want to run some of these generics, other than obviously the godly ones like, was it Stand and Deliver? No, it is, where is it? It's a Majestic. No, I'm in Warrior, that's why I can't find it. So we have, oh, now I've gone too far. We have Standing Order, it's close, and Rip Away, right? Obviously those two cards are pretty great for everyone's toolkits, but yeah, it's going to be fun.